Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everette. And before we get into the conversation with Chris LeBron, you'll see the lead of the title of the episode being that we lost a basketball legend today, or I guess as you're hearing this, today it happened, in Bill Walton. Bill Walton, on May 27th, at the age of 71, passed away. I don't love doing these podcasts and leading with stuff like this, but someone like Bill Walton really deserves the credit that he deserves. I think he's going to be a name in NBA history, basketball-wise, that may eventually age poorly, but as we'll get into the resume here in just a second, I don't know if that's really worthy of that happening. We'll kind of touch on this, but I'm not going to lead off with any kind of crazy advertisement. Just remember, SeatGeek, code 2-pointers, $20 off your first purchase. Links are in the description. You'll see it across the bottom of the episode with Chris LeBron. At the top, I just want to talk about Bill Walton. Like I said, Bill Walton at the age of 71 passed away. When you think about Bill Walton, you think of a couple of things. You think about the California, right? You think about he'd born in the Southern California area, went to college at UCLA from 71 to 74. Really, the only time he didn't spend time in California was when he played for the Blazers and the Celtics. So, and I guess I take that back. He did play some time with San Diego / the Los Angeles Clippers from 79 to 85. So he really spent the majority of his basketball career in some form or fashion in California. And that's obviously something that, is a big part of who he is. To talk a little bit about the basketball accolades, he is a two-time NBA champion in 1977 with the Trail Blazers, in 1986 with the Boston Celtics with Larry Bird and the rest of that crew. He's the 1977 NBA Finals MVP. He's an NBA Most Valuable Player in 1978, arguably his best season despite the championship the year before. He's a two-time All-Star, NBA All-Star in 1977 and 1978. Injuries did obviously get the better of him later in his career and probably took away some of those All-Star appearances. All-NBA First-Team Player in 78, All-NBA Second-Team Player in 77, All-Defensive First Team 2 times, 77, 78. You're noticing a theme here. Sixth Man of the Year Award in 1986, well-deserved for that Celtics team. Rebounding leader in 77, blocks leader in 77. Number 32 is retired by the Portland Trailblazers. The NBA 50th and 75th anniversary team member, two-time NCAA champion. This is the part about his career I think that gets forgotten about sometimes. 1972 and 1973, a champion, two-time NCAA Final Four most outstanding player in the same 2 years. He is a 3-time consecutive National College Player of the Year from 72 to 74, 3-time consensus first-team All-American in a row, 72 to 74. He's a James E. Sullivan Award winner, and then his number 32 is retired by UCLA. Averaged 13.3, 10.5, and 3.4 assists per game. Blocks were starting to be recorded around, I believe, the peak of his career there. He's a Basketball Hall of Famer in 2006 and a College Basketball Hall of Famer as well. So all those accolades to tell you that Bill Walton was an incredible player, and that is not something you're clicking on this podcast and listening to and absorbing from it. But just the way we should remember Bill Walton, really, if you think about it from a college basketball perspective, he died with the Pac-12. I think it's an honorable thing. Obviously, he fought a battle with cancer. I should have probably included that in the open, but just to, look, we're not here to be perfect, right? Bill Walton would have loved and appreciated every bit of the love and support that he's gotten over the last 24 to 48 hours, and hopefully, forever. Hopefully, Bill Walton is somebody that is remembered as a character, somebody that is remembered as somebody that is bigger than life, and that's really what he was, right? I obviously don't have any personal interaction or connection with him, but I think he teaches us a very valuable lesson, and that's just to be more positive about how we look at the world. Be positive to the people around us. Love people, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, as the Bible tells us. So think about Bill Walton in a way that you would think about anything else. And, we don't want to turn around and wake up 72 hours later and forget that he exists minus his basketball stats, right? Bill Walton was somebody that was larger than life, somebody that we appreciated as a character for over 10 years, got to hear his expertise on the game as well as his personality come through with with Bill Pash, and I feel really, or Dave Pash, excuse me, alongside Bill Walton, and I feel, obviously bad for Bill's family, Dave's family, and Dave himself for just having to endure this loss to the basketball world and to their personal and professional lives. But Bill meant everything to basketball. He was UCLA's finest. He would always tell you that anytime any story pops up, right? He always rooted for the Pac-12. He was always, just larger than life and able to give you everything he had and was the nicest person in the world. And you hear these stories like after people pass away, and then you're like, well, this is how the person was, and this is how we believe and talk about them, right? But this is how people talked about Bill Walton even before all his passing. So, again, rest in peace to Bill Walton. Didn't want to draw this out and to be something crazy, but use Bill Walton's legacy not as a basketball player, but as a person and just as somebody who lives life to the fullest, to love people better, to, just be an overall better human being to the people around you, and to enjoy life to its fullest. And ultimately, at the end of the day, cancer sucks. Enjoy the interview with Chris LeBron. As you heard in the intro, and as you see in the title, of course, as well, Chris LeBron's going to make his return here to the pod on Twitter at OffTheBallPod. Real LeBron 89, CEO of the On the Ball Network, Knicks fan TV contributor too, which is dope. So love to hear that. Love to see that. Watch some of those this year. Just some really fun stuff, man. You're up to a lot. Before we jump into it, obviously this is a return here, so people can go check out the last episode we did. We talked a little bit about the fandom, the history, obviously, which I kind of want to touch on here today, only because it really does play into what we're going to talk about a little bit. But before we jump into all that, for anybody that's new here, listening from your channel or is new to this episode, or maybe not, didn't listen to the last one, maybe they're a new subscriber around here, let them know where they can find you, what you're working on, and ultimately, what about you?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Off the Ball Pod. Like I said, that's from, I'm talking everything, whether it's college basketball, NBA, high school basketball. I do a few podcasts. Obviously, I do the Off the Ball podcast, where I kind of do a bunch of different type of basketball content. It's not just talking about the game. It'll allow you to do like draft stuff or, like redrafts or, what ifs, scenarios. And, I did a little series where we did, the best that never was, covered like some of the best teams to never win a championship, and I'm trying to, and now I'm working on kind of players that were on the verge of being great and just, for whatever reason, it just stopped and all that. So going now, I'm going to do first episode is Jabari Parker and all that. So,
that's a good one. That's good.
I was a big Jabari Parker fan. I remember just getting all the Slam magazines and reading about him from Chicago and being like, "Yo, this kid's." And he went to Duke. Duke's my team, so I really rooted for him hard, but unfortunately, didn't have the career he wanted. But yeah, I'm doing I do a college basketball recruiting pod. I'm now doing an NBA draft pod. So putting my extending my branches and putting them in different things that I had just in the one podcast, but kind of want to branch out and kind of to work with other different types of people that I respected and do that back and forth and all that. To me, that's a lot of fun. So yeah. Just a little bit of everything, Trev. It's just, the playoff run was fun with my New York Knicks. So I spent a lot of time just not even doing a lot. I didn't do as much content as I usually do because I was locked in. I was locked. I didn't care about baseball. I didn't care about football. I didn't care about anything. It was straight Knicks. But
that's how I felt about NC State's Final Four run. Don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
That's how, all I was doing was just enjoying it, man. There's nothing better. I mean, like we can all be analysts this or college basketball people that, and just it doesn't matter especially if our teams are in it, but you just got to enjoy it, and that's the fun part about it. Obviously, for those that might not know, you were one of the first people to connect with me a long time ago when I put this together. Obviously, a lot of mutual connections here, Stephen G and others. The Duke thing, of course, I'm connected down here in Tobacco Road. The Knicks were my first basketball game. I told you that last time we talked. First game I've ever went to as an NBA arena. So just never gonna. This is what it is. It's just not gonna be better than that. That was also like the week before the pandemic shut down. So that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about a team that plays in the Garden, of course. Unfortunately, not a team that's playing currently in the Garden like the Rangers are. But over the last few months, this is what I wanted to kind of talk with you about, and kind of just like I said, I just want you to paint the picture, right? So like you Remind me how old you are and when you started really watching the Knicks. Give me like a timeline to refresh my memory and everyone else's.
So I'm 35.
Okay.
So I grew up in probably the best era to be a Knicks fan. And if it was any other era, I'm probably not a fan of that team, of the Knicks. Especially if it was after that era. If I was into my 20s, if I was 25, I would have been a very depressed New York Knicks fan. But nonetheless, I grew up in a great era in the 90s where they were the only team, I believe, to have made the playoffs every year in the 90s. So it was just special. Like I spent a lot of time, obviously in New York City, but in each borough and just, I spent a lot of time in the Bronx. And that's kind of where I got my fandom because my uncle and my cousin were big time Knicks fans. And, I would try to like low key, like the Bulls or like Detroit because I love Grant Hill and, kind of, I guess you say he started my Duke fandom, but they were like, nope, those aren't allowed. You are a New York Knicks fan, and they just embedded the history into me, and maybe you understand why it's special to be a fan and all that. And that's kind of where I got started. And just like they were good, so it was like, all right, I'm rooting for a good team. We're in contention every year. I remember, I didn't remember '94 because I was only 4 or 5 years old, but when they went to in 99, I was like, all right, this is going to be all right. We went to the finals. We're 8 seed. We're going to get better. Obviously, since then, they only had 2 playoff series wins, so it's been tough, but, it feels good that it's getting back. And it's not like, it doesn't feel like it's like a one-off. It feels like, okay, this can be the start of something actually really good because they have assets. They got pretty, movable contracts if you had to make a big move and all that, and they've kind of hit on some guys that were under the radar and somehow they got for dirt cheap and then really played really well. The Hardensteins, obviously Jalen Brunson, who would have thought that, Dante DiVincenzo and all that. And so it's been a good ride the last few. Obviously, we could talk about the bad years, and the bad years were really bad and all that. But, it's good to go through those rough years and now to see the team is no longer a laughing stock. We're not a punchline because we were a punchline it wasn't that too long ago. We were a punchline maybe before the pandemic, 2019. That wasn't too long ago. So it makes you appreciate everything you go through as a fan and all that because it was bad. Especially if I have a lot of Brooklyn Nets fans as friends. So I remember the day KD signed, I'm literally on the corner of my couch and you see the headline. And I remember maybe 2 seconds, not even 2 minutes later, I'm like, oh, don't tell me, man, because he lived across the street from my buddy. And I opened the door. I'm like, he's looking at me. He's like, I was like, go home. Go home. I don't want to see your face. So we've come a long way as New York Knicks fans, but it feels good right now.
I want to table the offseason thing for just a second. So that was a perfect way to kind of go into what I wanted to kind of feel and understand what happened. So over the last few months, we've heard plenty of people say 94-95 team that went 4-3 with the Pacers. Obviously, they didn't make the finals that year. Really, any winning Ewing team. You mentioned 99. I think that was a good idea of where you were. But there really hasn't been a team. I mean, even look, as much as I love Melo, I've got the Christmas jersey hanging up over here. Like, I just love Melo, love that team. So much fun, right? That whole time about the 2 playoff series wins, you can thank Carmelo for one of those at least. Right, at least one, right? Not 2.
Yeah, just one.
Okay, yeah. So he wasn't both of them, right?
Indiana once again ended our season.
That's right. So talk about really just walk me and the listeners through what the team meant for you specifically. You kind of talked a little bit about it already, the fan base in the city. And is this the most beloved team since one of those teams in the 90s?
I mean, the Knicks tape team, 2013 team, that was a pretty special team. I do remember that, and being a very, I thought that team was possibly a championship team. Same thing like this, a 2 seed, but it felt like, like this team this year felt like, okay, like we can get to the conference finals, even if we were full strength, get to the conference finals, but maybe that's our ceiling. Where in 2013, that team was like, hey, we beat Miami 3 out of, I think they beat Miami 3 out of 4 times that season. So we were built to beat Miami, but we forgot that there's an up and coming team in the Midwest that has, the right pieces to stop us. So we kind of looked ahead. And remember, that first round series, we played Boston and we won the series, but we were up 3-0. We just blew it. It's just the blue collarness of this Knicks team from this year. It's just rugged. It kind of, I know when people think New York, they don't think of that blue collar and all. They kind of think it's, they see the bright lights and all that. But I think for the, if you really deep dive, it really is kind of has a blue collar mentality and all that. And I think this is what this team symbolized and all that. So that's why this team is beloved. But that Knicks tape team, 2013, that team, I felt like we could win it. We could win it if we could get past Miami. We're going to finals. We could win it all. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And then after that season, it was pretty bad till 2020 and all that, till we finally made the playoffs in before the COVID season. COVID season, after the COVID season. But yeah, I mean, this team was special though. It just had like I said, a lot of blue collar players and all that. But even though I felt like there was a cap of what we can do this year, like I said, I think in the future we're put in the right place. Unlike that 2013 team where maybe that was it, like maybe that was our shot, it's one and done. This team is like, okay, we got the right pieces in place and we have, draft capital and all that to make a legit run in these next few years to try to get a banner, because it's been a long time. 1973 is a long time, Trev. So, hopefully we could at least taste it a little, just get in the room, man. I just want to get in the room. I don't know how it feels like, it's like I was young with those championship teams, that went to the finals, not one, but, so I don't really appreciate it as if, as a 35-year-old, whenever they can get there. So, but this team's special. It's very special. A lot of grit, and they gave it all they can. Unfortunately, injuries. It's been the big thing in these playoffs is injuries to big time players and all that. But it happens, unfortunately. That's just how the NBA sometimes works, and hopefully one day we'll get the betterment of that. But it wasn't our year this year, so hopefully we can run it back and see what happens for next season.
And for those who watch on YouTube, they're going to see me accidentally leave the Zoom by accident. So come back to, but I got that whole story there. Thank you for that. So you talked about the Kevin Durant deal there earlier in that situation with the Brooklyn Nets fan friend. And obviously that's a big, I'm going to call it pivotal moment for a lot of people, because I wouldn't call that a success in Brooklyn by any means. So sometimes the grass isn't always greener. Sometimes hindsight's 20/20. But we're going to say that, assuming that Kevin Durant, being the top 30 player all time that he is, and Kyrie Irving, of course, it's probably not a bad thing no matter where they go, right? You at least get the best of what you can get from them. They just didn't stay healthy for all those years. But we've seen people think and assume that the Knicks in the past would leverage young assets and just like push everything away to try to get 2 or 3 big stars, and then we'll just figure it out, whatever, don't have any depth. And we've seen that fail with places like Phoenix, right? We've seen these situations in Brooklyn where it's like a Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell. We were second in line for that, right? And you know that, right? I'm not telling you anything new, but I'm prefacing my question with this is, now that you have this thought, like the way I think of what happened this year is whether Jalen Brunson is a championship one player, which I think is something that people can discuss. I totally think that's fair. But the whole goal of going out and getting a Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell was because they didn't have a Jalen Brunson. So my point is, I'm putting him in that class, in that category, because they're no longer seeking what they ultimately always wanted, right? Was what people thought they wanted, right? That's something I think is getting missed. So what is now your expectation for the offseason? Now that they've come off such an incredible year where, like you've said, the few injuries, and I think you're honestly a historic Game 7 performance. I mean, like, that doesn't happen. I think you probably win Game 7. Like, I really do think that. Like, I think the Pacers shoot 50%. Like, you guys have a fighting chance. Like, I know Brunson went out in the late third with the wrist, and that obviously plays into that. But long-winded to say, like, what's the realistic expectation? Because I expect for you to give me that, because you've been through all these years where they might not make that deal, or they might give up too much, right? Like, again, could have signed Melo. I give this example all the time. Sorry if this is bringing up old wounds, but could have gotten Melo for free. Just the cap and the cash is what I always say, right? Could have got him for the cap and the cash, but you gave up 3 pieces to get it. And I really do think that's what was probably one of the reasons they didn't win the title with Melo. So long-winded, give me a realistic expectation or outlook that you'd like to see that could help them get to the next step.
I do feel like this is going to be the craziest offseason in NBA history. Like, I think it's going to be very intense. There's going to be a lot of movement, more than we've ever seen ever. It's just going to be that type of offseason because there's a lot of teams that are on the brink or really need to do something, before it's too late. And there's a number of teams in the East, and obviously, we got the Clippers out West and all that. There's a bunch of teams, but especially in the East where it's like, we got to do something. So I feel like the Knicks are in a good position to do something, but they kind of have not, unlike previous regimes, they don't panic. They don't just make a move to make a move, which is what we've done. And even when like the Melo stuff, like I get why they didn't wait till the offseason because Brooklyn was a real thing. So I think they're worried, okay, if we wait till the offseason, people can change their mind. And I think Brooklyn was a real thing. And there was Dwight Howard rumors too at the time and all that. So that was a real thing. So I don't get on them as much for that move, that. I still think they could have still built a good team around them. And they showed it for 1 year. Just they weren't able to do that consistently. But I trust this regime. I trust Leon and Worldwide to make the right move and not just make a move just to do it. Like I said, previous regimes probably do that, but I don't think this Knicks regime is going to do it. They're going to try to find the right move who fits with Brunson. Like you said, in the past, when you're thinking about Donovan Mitchell and all these names, this wasn't with Brunson being an all-NBA player in mind. It was him being a solid piece, being a solid point guard for us, right? That was the probably thought, just give us a competent point guard. And then like, whoa, he's almost all NBA in his first year. And then, whoa, he is all NBA in his second year and he's an all-star. So it's like, okay, is he the one? Do we need to find a number, a two? Is Julius the two? That's another thing we got to figure out, when he comes back, is he that guy? So do I think I don't think they believe Julius is the two. I don't think they believe that. So that's why you're kind of hearing kind of rumors and rumblings and stuff. But, they have they've kind of hit on all their moves. Even Julius Randle, that was getting criticized. Obviously, that was criticized mostly because we didn't get Kevin Durant. That was more the reason why. But he's been an all-NBA player 2 times, 3 times, I think 3-time All-Star. Like, he's been very productive. But, now that we're not a laughingstock, now it's like, okay, what do we got to do to be a championship team? Is Julius that guy? We feel like Brunson's that piece. Whether he's a 1 or 1B, whatever you want to do that, the whole 1A, 1B stuff, it doesn't really matter. Can we find someone that can work with Brunson where he doesn't take away from what Brunson does great? Now, they're going to have to see if Julius can be that because we've seen it, but we haven't seen it in big-time games yet. Julius has been hurt the last 2 postseasons, so we haven't been able to see it in big-time games. So that's the one thing they're going to figure out. But they have the assets to make something happen and probably get the best package to any team, especially if any of these stars that they're talking about. But, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be the craziest offseason in the NBA history because there's so many teams that are panicking. And I felt like at one point we may be one of those teams, but I feel like after this season, they're not in panic mode. They're just going to let everyone unpanic and everyone else go crazy and all that and just, hey, man, we got our picks. We got a bunch of picks. We got some good movable contracts if you want, some good expiring contracts. Hey, let's talk. But they're not going to panic. And that's the one good thing is there's no panic right now. It's like, all right. And if nothing works out that makes sense, we'll sit back and then maybe we'll run it back and then we'll check back in All-Star break, or we'll wait till the next offseason where there's another superstar, maybe a better fit that's going to ask her out. So I think they're in a good spot this offseason where I don't think they're going to make anything drastic or trade a bunch of picks, too many players, kind of like the Melo trade. I don't think anything like that will happen. I think they'll make the right move. And if not, I think they're confident that they can run it back, re-sign some guys, and go at it again because injuries were I mean, let's be real. I think injuries are the only reason why we're not playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, or at least giving Boston a fight, a better. And Indiana did their thing. Even they had some guys down, but we lost everybody. We lost everybody. So it is what it is. But I'm really excited about this offseason. They have some draft picks too. So they got a couple late first round picks that there's some guys that can help them, especially to get some wings. We could use some wing depth. That can help that I like in those late 20s. So it's definitely an off season that's, I'm feeling good. Maybe beginning of season, I wasn't sure, but I think Brunson took away all those fears for a lot of Knicks fans. His ability to level up definitely makes us feel a lot better going into this off season than it was maybe before the season.
Yeah, to your point about picks, I mean, even if you just look to 2025, Dallas is a top 10 protected, and that'll more than likely, I mean, I'd be floored if that didn't come back to y'all. Detroit, top 13 protected. Like, Detroit could have a good year again. Could have a good year with Kate Cunningham and some guys, right? Maybe the young guys get better. That one's going to be kind of teetering on, but you'll get it next year no matter what, probably at that point. Bucks pick, no matter what, your own pick. Washington, that one's a little weird, top 10 protected. That would convey. So you could potentially have 5 picks next year, and the Cooper Flag draft or whatever people are calling it now. So, to your point about the picks, you don't have to give me exactly a name here. And we'll kind of close with this before we jump into. I got one question about the playoffs that, for context, we're recording this the night of Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. This game, Eastern Conference Finals, is already over, so people will get that when they hear this. But anyway, you don't have to give me a name necessarily. If you have one, great. It doesn't have to be realistic or anything like that. But you mentioned Brunson, the piece, the 1A, 1B, whole conversation there. Who is the perfect player next to Brunson?
Who is the perfect player?
And the wrong answer is Luka Doncic, because that's the right answer. And you can't say that because that was already an attempted thing before Brunson took it. Like, that's obvious, right? Like, I'm going to leave him out for a second.
Dallas had him, too. That's the crazy part. They had him, and they could have signed him for a lot less. And
the
now,
one time Mark Cuban was cheap. It makes like, it's one of those things I look back on. It's like, he's going to slap him. If Brunson takes them to some unbelievable places, this is the side note, it's going to be Cuban's biggest, like, I know that I'm saying this, and I know that they have a chance to win the finals this year, like a really good chance, but my God, Cuban's going to look back at this and be like, what were we thinking? Like, just figure it out, right? I know. He still says that's his biggest regret to this day. So, but to the point about the player, who's the best player next to Brunson?
Like a realistic option.
Doesn't have to be. I mean,
oh man,
just basketball fit. Man, who's the best person where you're like, this is going to be successful if they're next to each other?
I don't think it's like another guard next to him, like a ball dominant. Like you hear Donovan Mitchell stuff, and I do like Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a hell of a player. I mean, I know we only equate winning to winning championships, but he's been to the playoffs every year and all that, so he gives his team chances and all that. But we see in Cleveland, it's not working the way they thought it to be. I don't know. Can't think of a player, but my type is just a wing that doesn't need the ball in his hands, going to be able to, get open off, know how to use, screens and all that. I do think the Knicks need to be a little bit more creative offensively. It does feel like it's just like high pick and roll and all that, and a lot of that, and it works, but I would like them to be a little bit more creative and all that. So I heard you hear PG. I don't know if he is it. I don't know if he's it. Another guy, injury history and all that. That's the thing. It's so many fans. Like, I don't want injury because especially what we just went through. Do you want to get a guy who's you don't know? If, like we got OG and we played with us. He was fine. But then he got hurt when we needed him most, and that's kind of been a thing for him. We got a lot of guys who got nicked up, and got some big injuries. So
they traded for the wrong Raptor. Isn't that crazy to think? Like, I would have wanted at the time that happened. I still would have wanted OG. I really would have. Like, it's just nuts to think.
Yeah. So it's just I don't know. I don't know what player is the right fit. That's something I've still been going back and forth when people send me like, "Yo, what do you think about this trade and all that?" And I'm like,
is it not Mikal Bridges?
Okay, so Mikal Bridges.
I know it's not realistic. I know, like, it's hard because crosstown, whatever. It's hard, but
that's the one thing, right? I don't think, and I've seen a lot of trades, and I'm like, that's just an awful trade. Like, no team would accept. But I'm like, if you're Brooklyn, it really doesn't make sense because even if the Knicks give you the best, why would I make them? Why would I make the team that plays in the same city as me, same division, team I'm going to see them 4 times a year better? But for the Knicks, does that elevate you to a championship team? Is he that guy? Yes, the story is cool, the Villanova connection, that's cute and all that, but you want to take that next level to be a championship team. Does Mikal get you to that champion? He may be able to help us get to the conference finals, but are we still going to be better than a healthy Milwaukee? Obviously the Celtics. Is he going to help us be better than those teams? That's something I'm not 100% sure. So, yeah, it sounds good, the Nova boys and all that, but I don't know if that's the piece that's going to help this team, get that much. Are we that much better? Like, yeah, we're a little bit better, but now he's going to take a bigger role and everyone's going to take a more reduced role, So, like, how does that work? How do guys fit in that role now? So it's like, and like if you add Julius Randle to that, if Julius is not involved in a trade, Julius, Mikal, Brunson, I don't know. I don't know how that fits. It's kind of, it'll be tough because then like if Mikal is the third option, how good is he as the third option? And are we going to reduce Julius to be a third option? Because I don't think Julius as a third option is a player I want. 2 option, yeah, solid. But as a 3, I don't know what that even looks like. Julius as a third option. Is that a corner guy? We've seen him pout and all that. I don't know if that's gonna work. So I don't know. It sounds good. It's a cool story. He comes play with his boys, but I don't know if that's the piece. And this like Booker, like you hear Booker stuff. Like I think they're gonna run it back one more year, Suns. And maybe if the same results happen, we'll see here some. But that's why I think the Knicks are in position to do something, but I don't think they will. I don't think they'll do something big because I don't know if they feel confident in anyone who's potentially available is going to help them get to that next step. So I think they eventually they kind of run it back, maybe add a couple pieces here and there, some depth, some wing depth, and I think they kind of run it back, and then wait for next season where I think you'll hear more names because the names here are kind of older names, the Paul Georges, you're in like those guys are kind of, in their 30s and banged up. I think next season we might hear, but I still think they'll be in position to do something, but I don't think just off the top, I don't think they'll do a crazy drastic move this offseason.
I'm with you. I asked the question because I genuinely don't know the answer, and I sat here the entire time you were going through it.
It's really it's something that I'm like I try to think of trades like and I'm like I can never be like I'm cool with this. Like I would be all right with this, and it's just I'm like this is a gut feeling like yeah they can make it like I said, but I don't think they're going to just do it just to do it. I think they're really just gonna let everyone else fight it out. And then because they have the most assets and all that and movable and good contracts, tradable contracts, they got Bogdanovich is, expiring that teams love that. So they got, I don't think they're going to be fighting with everybody else. Like, a lot of these teams are, I think they're going to sit back and let everything, the dust settle. And if it makes sense, then boom, we'll make a move. But if not, we'll stay put. We'll re-sign some guys. Well, hopefully everybody's healthy, and we'll try to run it back and then see what happens next offseason where maybe some bigger names, some bigger names.
I have one for you that we can leave off with and ponder is Jared Allen. Cleveland's got something to figure out, and obviously Hartenstein doesn't have to play 40 minutes, right? It doesn't, you're not putting yourself in a position where those guys are overexerting themselves. And Jared Allen, for the most part, has proved to be healthy. For the most part, he's had some stretches, but Cleveland as a whole hadn't been healthy in the last 2 to 3 years consistently. So that's the name I'd be kind of keeping an eye on because you can get him for low right now. Super low. Like talking like maybe a first and a young player right now. So
yeah, it all depends what they want to do with Mitch or Robinson because I'm pretty sure they want to bring back Hartenstein. Now the number is high. Yeah. The number is high that he wants. So I'm very curious to see.
They knew that when they got him from the Clippers though. Like that was an assumption. If he had a big year, he was going to be eligible for a lot more than what he got
Yeah.
from Los Angeles.
So that's the thing too, is that this team can get really expensive real quick because Brunson's going to be his extension eligible now. But I know there's people that are like, oh, he's going to take $100 million less. I'm not a financial advisor,
Nope.
but I would not advise Jalen Brunson to take $100 million less. Maybe 20, 40, and then people are like, oh, he'll make it up in endorsements. I was like, I didn't know he had a shoe deal. I didn't know he's LeBron James where he can make. No, he can't make up $100 million. You don't. No, he's not that type of player that type of marketable player where he's gonna make up and you see this, and I'm trying to there's a lot of delusional Knicks fans, and I'm just like, guys, he's not making up $100 million. I don't know what agent would be like, yo, this is $100 million, bro. That's a 15 per. I don't think he's a second round pick. Remember that. And I know he got a nice little deal with the Knicks, but $230 million. I'm advising, bro. Hey, man.
Would you like to know how much he's eligible for, and that would make people understand?
Why would
30.
you? And then Julius is up for a contract. You got to pay Hardenstein. Josh Hart just signed. For
Josh Hart's on the books. He's on the books until 28-29, which
is so you just signed him last month. Yeah, so a lot of guys are going to be. It's going to get expensive. This team. So that's what I'm saying. You got to figure out if Julius is that guy because he's going to want to get paid too. So there's a lot of moving factors. But I still think they'll probably re-sign Hardenstein and all that. But Jared, I don't know about Jared. I don't know if he has that in him, that dog in him. I know he was in Brooklyn, but Brooklyn's different from playing for the New York Knicks. It's a different animal. I don't know if he can handle that. That's another thing you got to factor in too. Can some of these guys handle the daily grind of the media and because not a lot of guys can handle that. And at times Julius has gone back and forth with the media and all that. Brunson hasn't had to deal with that yet, but because it's still the honeymoon stage. But it's still the honeymoon stage. It's only year 2.
You're right.
The minute he has a bad series or something, that's when the media could turn on you. Ask Carmelo. When he first got here, it was all gravy. He got passes all the team, and then as he got a few years after, especially after that Knicks tape team, started feeling it, and then it was never the same. So, it's going to be an interesting offseason for this team. But I do feel like they'll make the right moves, and I'm not going in pessimistic as I usually am as a fan. I'm highly optimistic.
As you should be. That was how we started this whole pod. Brunson, for what it's worth, eligible for $37.4 million in 26-27. All right, let's rapid fire a few of these and we'll get out of here. What's the bigger surprise in the playoffs this year? Is it that Boston lost 2 games on its way to the finals, or is it the Timberwolves that could be swept by the Mavs? Assuming that people are going to hear this, they'll know the result.
I have them. I thought they would win in 5.
That's easy for you. So that's an easy answer.
That's easy. Boston, you lose. It happens. And they're one of those teams that they need to lose.
Give me that answer. I figured
you lose, and you just all right, guys, let's finish them up. And they did that every time. So I wasn't
both times, right?
Yeah. They did. And I'm like, that's like when they lost to Miami, everybody was freaking out, and I was the one hey, Miami had to shoot the highest 3-point percentage in their playoff history to beat them. And that was their game plan, right? Miami's game plan. The only way we're going to win this game is if we just shoot the heck out of the ball. And they did it, and Boston wasn't prepared. But guess what happened? They won by 40 every game after that. So, and then same thing with the Cleveland series. And then obviously you saw what they did, to the Pacers and all that. So, yeah, Minnesota, I had Minnesota in 5 or 6 games. I thought they matched up perfect with Luka and Kyrie and all that. And they matched up with the size of Dallas. So I thought that was going to be a 5 or 6 gamer, and doesn't look that way. It's definitely not going to be a 5 or 6 game series. So, yeah, that one was I didn't expect that one.
Yeah, for those listening to this on potentially Wednesday, the 29th of May, that's 49-49, about to be half here. So low-scoring affair this time up for Game 4. All right, so last question for you. Week draft, I know that's been thrown around a ton. Not a big fan of it, even though whether it's true or not, we're always someone's always going to be right or wrong, and some of these guys are always going to be somebody's going to turn out. Like the statistical likelihood of one of these guys not being an all-star is like unreal low. Like even some of the worst, like 2000 or whatever, you still had three
Yeah,
all-stars.
2000 got 3 All-Stars, I think.
Bingo. So it's like right. It's gonna happen. This is gonna be a 2000 type year where, oh my God, no way, 3 all-stars. It's like, who could have seen that come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's your favorite prospect this year?
My favorite prospect. I had one that I thought the Knicks would definitely be in play for in the 20s, but I no longer think he's going to be in play. Is Jalen Tyson out of Cal. I watched some of his games late in the season, because like I said, I do a Get a Bucket podcast with my guy Kev, and he's out in the West Coast, and he kind of put me on him. And I know Cal is not known for basketball, but he's like, "Yo, you got to watch this kid, this Tyson kid." I was like, "Okay." I started watching him, and I was like, "Oh, I like him. He's just got a smooth game and all that. 6'7", he's an upperclassman and all that. I know people don't like upperclassmen and all that, but he's just a good player. I just think he's going to be a good player, and then just he can shoot, he can play some defense and all that. He's just a really good player and all that. So he's someone I like a lot. Like I said, I watched him a lot more late in the season. Catch some of his games, and he's definitely, I don't know, he's just stuck in my head. And when the drafts, like when all the combine stuff happened, and I was like, I hope he has, and he did well and all that. Now he went from probably being, after the season ended, maybe, a top 45 to 50 player, and now I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the lottery, and so he's definitely one of my favorite players and all that in this class.
Well, I appreciate your time. I asked for 30. I got 35. So, as always, it's really appreciated when we have you around here. Plug away many things you got working on, like you've already talked about. Talk about anything you're working on coming up here as the draft's approaching, like we just talked about. Anything you want. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure to chop it up with you, Kev. You can follow me at Off the Ball Pod. You can see the handle right here if you're watching live. That's where I'm most active. You want to talk ball, I like having good conversations and all that, so you could hit me up there. Instagram too, Off the Ball Pod. Check out the YouTube channel, Off the Ball Network. Check that out. Give us a sub, like, and all that. I just did my 200th episode of the Off the Ball podcast, which is I just did yesterday or 2 days ago. I did, so that was a cool accomplishment. 200 episodes. I remember the first one I did. It was bad. It was real bad. So I've come a long way. Now I got like a mini studio, right here, so I've come a long way. I've been able to interview, former All-Stars, Emmy Award winners, draft, scouts, all these, and network with so many cool people throughout these 4.5 years of doing the podcast. So that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I just did episode 200. Like I said, I got a new draft pod calling out called Lotto Bound. My guy Corbin Ford. We just did episode 1 last week. We did a lottery mock. Have some surprises in there, so we're planning on finishing the rest of the mock this week. So check that out, Lotto Bound. And I got the Get a Bucket podcast. We talk about college basketball, recruiting, all that stuff. We're going to get back up to doing that and talk about the recruiting scene and all that. What high school kids were looking forward to watching this season and all that, and talk about the the circuit that's going on, and then what kids we like coming out, for the next few years and all that. But yeah, catch that, subscribe on whatever podcast platform and all that. Like I said, follow me, Off the Ball Pod, our most active. And like I said, man, thanks for having me on.
Everything that Chris just mentioned will be linked below. Go drop him a follow, like, subscribe, everything that's greatly appreciated in the podcast world. As always, thanks again, my friend.
Appreciate you, brother, man.